I live in Kirkby Moorside, not far from the southern edge of the North Yorkshire moors. Every working day, I cycle across a railway bridge to get to my place of work. Up until 2010, Kirkby Moorside railway station was still in existence, but it was then demolished to make way for a housing estate and latterly a vet's. I was curious as to how much of the old railway line could still be found, so I decided to find out. Here is a map of the Gilling and Pickering railway line. It was built in stages starting in 1871 and got as far as Helmsley. By 1874, the track had been extended to Kirkby Moorside, and by 1875 it went all the way to Pickering. Gilling station already lay on the Thirsk and Malton railway line, so I thought I might as well extend my searches further west to the point where it joins the East Coast Main Line, which is still very much in existence. Anyway, without further ado, let us go to Husthwaite, or Husthwaite Gate as it was sometimes called. Remember, this is on the Thirsk and Malton line, which opened in 1853 and therefore predates the Pickering to Gilling line. So, another day, another rather colder day, definitely winter coming on now. I'm in Husthwaite, which is near to the very last stop on the line before it joins the main East Coast route. I am going to head to the line down in that direction in a minute. This is quite clearly a bridge which the railway used to go over. That's heading south, and a couple of miles down the track it joins with the main East Coast Mail line, and that way, not that far away, is the remains of the Husthwaite station itself, which is where I will be heading next if I can figure out how the footpaths work around here. Here you can clearly see the trees are lining the embankment that used to carry the track. I've no idea what this building is, but it's very near to the railway, and that circular hole on the first floor does rather suggest a station clock, but it may just have been a farmhouse that happened to be near the railway. It certainly isn't Husthwaite Station, because this is Husthwaite Station. Looks like I've made it to Husthwaite Station. That is what remains of Husthwaite Station just behind me. That's heading more or less south towards the East Coast Main Line. This is the last station, as I say, on the line before it joins the main East Coast route. This is actually now a campsite, or I believe it is, but probably not in November. If we turn round, I will turn the camera around. As I say, if we turn round, this is it heading more or less north, and we're now on the railway line, which is a public footpath, which makes my job a great deal easier. Yeah. The embankment that used to carry the railway track continues in more or less a straight line north-east towards Coxwold. It passes over a single arch which presumably allowed farmers access to their fields, and eventually reaches a gate. On the far side of the road can be seen the remains of Coxwold Station. Okay, I have now made it to Coxwold. That is the remnants of Coxwold Station. You can see the railway comes straight down here and up their driveway. I think that signal box, or whatever it is original, but as you can see, the station has been somewhat modified since the railway was first here. From this point, I had to follow the road into the centre of Coxwold. There is a crossroads. If you turn right at this point, you soon recross the old railway line over a substantial brick bridge. Next stop, Ampleforth. Ampleforth Station lies some way to the east of Coxwold. About the first thing you come to is Newborough Priory. There is the odd isolated farmhouse, but most of the time you're walking some distance to the south of the railway line, which lies just beyond this farmhouse. Eventually, however, the railway track and the road converge and then cross, only to cross again shortly afterwards. As you get closer to the road that heads north towards Ampleforth, there are obvious signs of railway workings, and there's this house hidden in the trees, which surely must have something to do with the railway. Thorpe Hall lies very near to the junction of the road and the railway line, but isn't the station. I messed up at this point. The station house is actually slightly to the north. Gilling Station lies more or less due east of Ampleforth Station, but unfortunately the nearest public footpath is about 400 metres to the south, from which you have fairly good views of Ampleforth Abbey and School. Before long you pass Redcar House. At this point a footpath does head northeast and recross the railway, but I did not investigate. You then join a long rough road which takes you all the way to Gilling, where there seem to be many signs of railway activity, but things are not quite what they seem. This is, in fact, the Rydale Miniature Railway, run by the Rydale Society of Model Engineers. If you then press on to the centre of the village and turn left at the crossroads, before long you will see signs of the engine shed, and shortly afterwards you come to the station house itself. You can see that the canopy over the platform still survives, and the station clock is still present in the wall. About 2.5 kilometres east of Gilling Station, the track split two ways. One turned to head north towards Nunnington. This marks the start of the Pickering-Gilling Railway, and the other continued to Malton on the Thirsk and Malton Railway. After the line was closed in 1964, Nunnington Station continued as a cafe and then as the Rydale Lodge Hotel, but it is now a private residence. Okay, now I'm at a place called Rydale Lodge, which is some distance from Nunnington to the west. So if Rydale Lodge was the station, they certainly had quite a long walk in order to get here. However, whatever Rydale Lodge is, it's certainly very close to the railway. This is a bridge just to the right of where I was standing when I took the photo of Rydale Lodge. And this is without doubt the railway. Quite a deep cutting here to get under the road. I'm standing on the bridge in case you haven't figured that out. I shall now go and have a look on the other side of the bridge. Here we are on the other side of the bridge. There you can see the site of the old railway. Haram is a village that's roughly halfway between Helmsley and Nunnington. It never had a station on the Gilling to Pickering line, but it did have a siding. Indeed, there is still a signpost in Haram pointing the way to Haram siding, despite the fact there has been nothing there since the mid-60s. I set out to investigate. This building lies about a mile south of the village of Haram and is right next to the path of the old railway line. So there's the railway line. Question is, where is the siding? I haven't seen any old photographs that show the siding, and all I can gather from Google Maps is that it probably forked off from the main line about 100 metres or so further back and ended up just in front of the building that stands behind the one in the foreground. But this is speculation. Hello. Today I'm at Haram Sidling, which is about a mile south of the village of Haram. Haram lies between Nunnington and Helmsley on the old Gilling to Pickering railway line, but it never actually had a station. It simply had a siding. Behind me is a building which may have something to do with the railway. I think it may be a railway gatehouse. The railway itself heads down in that direction. I don't know if you can see down there. That's in the direction of Helmsley. That's sort of going north westish, and in the other direction you can still see the embankment going southeast towards Nunnington. This is the view looking southeast from the same spot, and you can quite clearly see that suspiciously straight track is the railway line, or at least where the railway line used to be. It passes through a gate which is just in front of me, and then off the other side. So the railway comes down here, goes through this gate, crosses this road, past what I'm calling the gatehouse, but may not be, and off in the direction of Helmsley. Helmsley station was the largest station on the line. It opened in 1871 and was briefly the terminus until the line was extended to Kirkby Moorside in 1874 and later still to Pickering. Okay, what you're looking at is Helmsley railway station. Not a great shot. The track is actually on the other side. I'm looking more or less east, and the track curves round heading south on the other side of the railway station. I believe that other building just to the right between the station and the tower is also a railway building. Both are still in use, although obviously not as a station. There is a sort of a footpath going around the other side. I'll see if I can get a better view from the other side. Here's another view of the station with me poking my camera up over a hedge. Thank heavens for the flippy screen. This is the eastern side of the station building. The track would have run just in front of the flower bed, I imagine. If you walk down the footpath to the left of the driveway, you will find a couple of information boards and a stretch of platform, although the track bed is somewhat overgrown. There's this little information board down the side of the station. The little footpath goes down to the left of the house, stroke station, and at the end there's this little board. And if you look down here, past my bicycle and my shadow, ooh, it's terribly overexposed. I'll do something about that. That's a bit better. That is the railway. As I say, it's heading south, or southish at this point. It will curve round to the right and then head off in the direction of Kirkby Moorside, i.e. east. Also, if you stand at the end of the driveway and then follow Station Road south in the direction of Rydale Vets, and then look back at the station in a northeasterly direction, you can make out what appears to be an old signal box. I have also heard it said that some of the sheds may date back to railway days. If you head east out of Helmsley along the A170 and turn right onto Acres Lane, you will pass almost immediately over another railway bridge. This is the railway bridge. That's the western side, and this is the eastern side. If you look over the eastern side of the bridge, you can see, you can probably walk along that without too much difficulty, although I don't think it is a public footpath. That's very, very much the railway. I'll go over the other side. Yeah, seems to be some stone down there. Well, I don't think it's a platform, because Helmsley is not far away. It's going this way, that's heading
east, the track takes quite a violent turn to the left to head south, and on the curve is Helmsley station. It then heads south and slightly to the east to get to Nunnington.
Midway between Helmsley and Norton, a road crosses the railway line. Here you will find Pockley Gates Cottage, which was built in 1875 as a railway gatehouse. You can stay there if you like, because it's a holiday cottage.
Anyway, pushing on a bit further, now not far from Helmsley. This house, it's not a station, but it seems to be almost, this gate must cover the route of the railway. And if you look down here, yeah, so that's the route of the railway. This is to the west of Bedlam Grange. It's the next road heading south off the A170. That's pretty certain that's the railway.
Moving on a bit further east, we're now in Norton, just to the south of the A170. Norton straddles the A170.
Here we have the surviving station. This is what remains of the railway station. I think this is actually facing away from the railway, and I believe this building over here, move this way a bit, this building over here is also a remnant from the days of the railways. I'm not sure what, but it does tell you somewhere on the internet. Seems to be a plaque on the side of it as well. I'm not sure what that says. Anyway, so that's Station House, appropriately named, in Station Road, and there's a new development called the Sidings, so there's plenty of clues here that there used to be a railway. Rather more remaining than there is in Kirkby Moorside.
If you go round to the south side of Station House, you can see that the platform's still there, and also the station clock. There even seems to be a signal. I'm not sure if that's original. And a bit further down the platform, there's even a bridge, but I rather suspect that's not original. That would be quite a small train that would get under there. Before the railway line reaches Kirkby Moorside, it recrosses the A170, which turns through 90 degrees to the north of Wimbledon. Then it heads over fields and passes underneath a road bridge.
Now I'm standing on a bridge that allows the railway to go underneath. If I walk this way, so that is where the railway emerges from the viaduct, comes across here and then passes under this bridge, emerging on this side, across this field, passing through that row of trees and out the other side. The A170 is curling round behind those trees from the left. You may be able to see a few cars going by. And then eventually on the far side of those trees, a couple of fields further on, it recrosses the A170 more or less at right angles and then continues parallel to it. I'm now looking more or less north. This is the line of trees I pointed out from the bridge, and if I pan round a bit and point it at the right place, there is the bridge I was standing on previously. It would have come across this field more or less to where I'm standing and then continued on. Yeah, so I was just saying that there isn't any evidence of the railway here, but in fact there is. There's this post here, and a fence post presumably, not sure, and on the other side is another fence post as well. So I suspect that this marks the two sides of the railway track. Also, if you look between the two posts, you can see the ground is somewhat higher there than it is here. There's quite a depression, so this must be where the railway went. Don't know if you can see that. There's one post. And there's the other. I'm now standing near the river, not far from Kirkdale Minster. This is pretty much the lowest point, and I imagine once upon a time, before the A170 was finished, this was the main road heading east-west, which is not far from the railway, as you can see. This viaduct would have once carried the railway. Okay, here we are in Starfit Lane. Behind that fence, just running alongside that building, that must be the route of the old railway. I don't know if the building was there when the railway was. It's possible, but I don't think there was a station here. That's Starfit Lane, that's looking north. And this is the west side of the road, and quite clearly behind that fence, that line of trees is the path of the railway.
The following bit was recorded at the point where the railway line recrosses the A170, not far from Kirkby Moorside.
At this point, the old railway crosses the line of the newer A170. You can tell this, and I'll show you this in a minute, because there's a slight embankment beside the road here, just over there to my right, on the other side of the A170. So it crosses over from there, comes over to where I am, and then continues parallel to the path, which is on my right. If I turn the camera around, I can show you the embankment, and that carried on here. This is one of the few points where the railway line actually passes to the north of the A170. I would guess the A170 didn't quite follow the route of the railway, because there's quite a deep valley in that direction near Kirkdale Minster, which would have been somewhat inconvenient for the cars. Presumably that was the route of the original road, but I've been unable to find much information on how the A170 was built at the moment. Although apparently Wikipedia says there's been a route along this corridor since prehistoric times. I'll take their word on that. Right, this is on the northern side of the A170. That hedge in the distance you see lines a minor road that heads off to the north of the A170 in the direction of Kirkdale Minster. But if you see here, if you see where these trees are lining an embankment, and that is the route of the old railway.
We are now going to go to the westernmost of the two bridges in Kirkby Moorside and follow the railway back to the point where it crosses the A170 that we just saw.
Okay, we're a little bit nearer the bridge now, and you can see on the western side of the bridge, if you look at that fence, that marks the path of the old railway. If you go and stand on top of the bridge, which I'll do in a minute, you can see where the railway used to go. Right, here we are more or less standing on the railway bridge. This is the side facing east. Right, here we are on the west side of the bridge that carries Gortysyke Lane south from the A170, and it's fairly obvious where the railway line used to go. This is heading more or less west in the direction of Helmsley. There's one stop between here and Helmsley, that's at Norton, which was never a particularly busy stop. Helmsley on the hand was very busy, particularly for loading cattle, and but not as busy as Kirkby Moorside regarding passenger traffic. Right, I've come maybe about a kilometre to the west of where that bridge was, to where a public footpath comes down towards where I believe the railway line used to be. If you look at this line of trees, which comes down here, I believe this follows more or less the line of the old railway line. And if you look back there, between those two new sheds, which are also a fairly recent addition, you may just be able to see in the far distance the houses beside the bridge that I was at a moment ago. If you turn the other way and face west, we are looking to the west. You can see the line of trees going off into the distance. I imagine that eventually crosses the A170, which you can probably just hear over to my left, a few hundred metres away. It crosses the A170, which of course wouldn't have been there when the railway was there, and there are a number of bridges over the other side of the road where the railway continues.
Now we go and visit the other bridge in Kirkby Moorside, which is on Ings Lane heading south from the main roundabout in Kirkby Moorside.
Hello, today I'm in Kirkby Moorside. The bridge behind me comes off the main road, the A170, which is just over there to my left, and heads south down Ings Lane. Once upon a time it used to go over the railway that ran from Gilling in the west to Pickering in the east. Originally the branch from Gilling only went as far as Helmsley, but it was later extended to Kirkby Moorside and then on to Pickering, which is off in that direction to the west by about 7 miles. Then later on in about the 1950s, I believe, the route was shortened so it only went as far as Kirkby Moorside, so Kirkby Moorside once again became a terminus, and then it was eventually shut in the 1960s. Up until I think 2010 there was a station here which would have been just to my left. The platform would have been just over here, but recently in the last few years, last 2 or 3 years, there's a nice new vets building has gone up more or less where the station used to be. Before that, in I think about 2008, a new housing estate was built just over there, and they have named one of the roads Weybridge Close, presumably to commemorate the Weybridge which used to be down there. Here's a view standing on top of the bridge, about just to the right of those caravans behind the trees. There's a sort of a driveway. This may have been one of the sidings of the original Kirkby Moorside railway station. You can see the housing estate, the relatively new one. This is probably more or less where the platform used to be. When I first moved to Kirkby Moorside, the station was still here, and it was in use as offices for an agricultural machinery company. And there's the back of the Grace Lane Vets, which has just gone up in the last couple of years. Let's go and look at the other side of the bridge. Here's the other side of the bridge. Clearly all this was built after the railway was decommissioned. I think this is Micro Metal Smiths here, or I forget, and behind that is the Rydale Laundry, but the railway would have once gone straight through in the direction I'm looking now, straight through that blue shed and onwards.
And just for completeness, here's a picture of the other side of the bridge. That's the side facing west. And here's another picture of the front of Grace Lane Vets. The next station to the east of Kirkby Moorside is Sinnington. Right, I have made it to Sinnington, and behind me is what remains of Sinnington Station, and you can probably see the fence in front of it, which is the path that the railway used to take. I'll see if I can get a few more photographs a bit closer. Here is a photograph of Sinnington Station from the early part of the 20th century. After the First World War, a bus service was introduced that passed through the centre of the village of Sinnington. Consequently, use of the railway station declined, and this was the first station on the line to be closed in 1953, the same year the tracks were lifted between Pickering and Kirkby Moorside. Here is the station today. It has been converted into a private house, but as you can see, the buildings and the platform survive virtually unchanged. Set back from the platform somewhat are some railway cottages. Before the railway could negotiate the route from Sinnington to Pickering, it needed to negotiate Relton Cliff. Cliff may be something of an exaggeration, but nevertheless it provided quite a large obstacle to those who built the railway. This necessitated the building of Risborough Cutting and Risborough Bridge to carry the road over it. Having cut deeply through the ground, the railway line then finds it needs to be supported by an embankment as the ground falls sharply away. Before long, it passes over a bridge.
Hello, I'm standing near the site of the old railway that would have gone between the stations at Pickering, and next stop is Sinnington. Behind me you can see where there used to be a bridge that went over this road, and there's just the stonework remaining. The bridge has been removed for safety reasons, no doubt. I'm just a little way to the east, a few hundred yards maybe, from where the railway passes through Relton Cliff, as it is called, which is rather an exaggeration, but nevertheless it is quite a deep cutting, and the road turns at right angles to pass over it. That's a little way in that direction.
The track continues on its embankment on a more or less straight course for about 2 kilometres and then slowly starts to turn north and then more sharply as it approaches Pickering from the south.
Behind me is Goslip Bridge, just outside Pickering, to the south and somewhat to the west. The railway line would have come down towards me, heading more or less east. It would go down through the caravan park, which you may be able to see in the distance. Where that caravan is, that's more or less where the railway is. It then crossed Mill Lane, crosses Pickering Beck over a bridge, and there's another small bridge which I think was mainly for pedestrian usage, and then it turns north. It joins the railway line that runs from Rillington, and the other railway is the one coming in from the east, which is the Forge Valley line, which heads off all the way to Seamer, where it also joins the York to Scarborough line. This is the view pointing off to the west in the direction of Sinnington. You can see the railway line quite clearly between these two hedges, fences, and heads off into the distance. You can probably see on the horizon the ground gets a bit higher. That would be Relton Cliff, through which the railway line cuts.
And finally, here's a view of Goslip Bridge from the eastern side looking west.
Okay, I am now standing on what I believe to be is a bridge that took the Gilling to Pickering line in to the south of Pickering to join up with the station. If you see over there, it continues into those trees on a bit of a raised ground, and I imagine that carried the railway along the line of these houses into Pickering railway station. Now, I think I figured out this bridge. I got it completely wrong initially, but what it is this is the railway bridge that carried the Gilling to Pickering railway into Pickering itself, Pickering station, and it came in from the west, curved round over this bridge, and then headed into Pickering station from the south, heading north, so to speak. And I think this is what they call Mill Lane Junction. That road is still called Mill Lane, so that would seem to make sense. And I think this is about the point, just after this bridge, just over in that direction, the land continues on an embankment and ploughs along the edge of some more modern houses. So I think this is about the spot where the three railway lines joined. That's to say, the Pickering to Gilling line, which came from over there. I believe the Rillington to Pickering line came in from that direction, from the south, and joined up just over there where the where the houses are, sort of on the corner, and also the so-called Forge Valley line, which opened in 1882. The Forge Valley line is rather strangely named because it doesn't actually pass through Forge Valley at all. It heads more or less east and west. However, there was a station that served both east and west Ayton, which was called Forge Valley, and actually sits at the southern end of Forge Valley. It's complicated. There were earlier lines planned that never happened, that were planned to actually go through Forge Valley, but they never happened. And for some reason, they kept the name. I think there was a confusion with another possible Forge Valley. I don't know. Anyway, it's called the Forge Valley line, which is rather confusing. And I think, not quite sure what order they connected together, but I think it came in from the east and joined round about here as well. So they all joined together and went that away to join up with Pickering Station. This is the Pickering Beck that runs through the centre of Pickering. And the railway lines cross it all over the place. But if you look there, just more or less in the centre of the picture, there is yet another railway bridge, only a matter of a few metres away from the other one I showed you. This would have also carried the Gilling to Pickering railway in. In the background, you can see Vivis Mill, and Mill Lane runs just in front of that, so that's why they called it Mill Lane Junction.
There are a number of buildings in central Pickering that are related to the railway. When I first moved to the area, there was a coal yard that must have been alongside the railway at one time. Now, however, it has been demolished, as can be seen in this picture from 2008, and has been replaced by a Lidl supermarket. However, if you look up the driveway that lies between Lidl and the Pickering dental practice, you can still see a surviving engine shed. And that driveway is in fact a bridge over the river, which most certainly must date back to railway times. On the other side of the A170, opposite Lidl, is a street known as the Ropery. I don't know why it's called the Ropery, because I have been unable to find any references to rope making in the area, and as far as I can tell, this street, together with the adjacent car park, used to be the goods yard of the nearby Pickering station. This building on the western side of the Ropery turns out to be a Grade 2 listed building. It is currently in use as a hairdresser's. The record for its listing describes it as a railway building, but does not actually give it a specific purpose. Then, finally, of course, there is Pickering Station itself, which is still very much in existence and is run by volunteers on the North Yorkshire Moors Railway. At the time of visiting, it was very much shut due to the COVID-19 crisis, but this is the only point on this video you will see some actual railway track. At one point there were railways going north, south, east and west from Pickering. Unfortunately now we only have one going north, and that used to have two tracks, but one set of tracks was pulled up in the 1970s. And if pictures of railway track aren't exciting enough for you, here's some video of an actual steam train in Pickering Station from August 2019.
The train,